Welcome to the Gnostic Hub. I'm your host, Elizabeth. It is an honor to have you with us once again in this marvelous journey as we seek answers to the most basic questions that have captivated the mind of men throughout history. Our goal is to provide you with guidance in helping you achieve a more fulfilled, holistic lifestyle. Today, we are going to cover a very interesting subject, which will help us understand all the different paths that different religions, as well as disciplines, teach their students who are on the path of self-discovering to living a more conscious lifestyle. Today's topic is the four paths. Okay then, let's get started. Life is a series of events or outcomes that are normally escorted by its respective state of consciousness. For all those of us in search of the truth, in search of oneself, those of us that are seeking for that spiritual path of self-realization, all of that is being promoted by not just plain curiosity of the occult, as some might think. No. It is directed by our internal awareness of the truth. The truth that can only be experienced if we are in a state of real consciousness. In this arduous search of self-realization, we could differentiate several ways related with the different levels of inner development. Every path that is available will become a long and hard process. Normally, it is a path that, if endured, would lead men towards the same one direction, which is self-realization. Self-realization and immortalization are not properties which humans are born with, but they can be conquered, not as easily as one would expect them to be though. But nevertheless, they are options that one can pursue when the soul is ready for this change. Now we are going to talk about the four paths. These paths that we are about to explore and get an insight on differ from one another. But the objective is basically the same: to attain real consciousness, to find the truth. So these are the four paths. The first path is the path of the fakir. The second path, the path of the monk. The third path is the path of the yogi. And the fourth is the straight path. So first, we will start with the path of the fakir. When we hear the word fakir, we immediately transport ourselves to the Orient, right? To the East, particularly in the enigmatic and mysterious country of India. In Persia, the term fakir means beggar or someone very impoverished. In India, the jugglers, the clowns, and the tumblers, they all call themselves fakirs. The Europeans, though, use the term fakir to describe yogis. Also, they give this term to the errant monks of different orders. This doubtful, long, and difficult path of the fakir is a path of struggle and is done with full acknowledgement in order to develop within oneself the physical power or willpower to defeat pain, to achieve the power over the physical body, to achieve the power over pain. And this is done by terrible sufferings. And those fakirs have to go through very hard trials. The fakir's path is made of incredible, fatiguing physical exercise. They take on some of the most difficult physical positions. For example, they will keep themselves standing in the same position without any movement during several hours, days, months, or even years, just to punish their physical body and overcome any pain. Other fakirs will place themselves in a seated position over a stone under an implacable sun, under the rain, in the snow, etc. There was this one fakir that decided to raise his hand and kept it stretched out for an indefinite amount of time until this member becomes so stiff that it can't be moved anymore. Some of them go to the extent of torturing themselves with fire, puncturing their bodies. They can be found sitting on ant hills in which they would put their naked legs to be, just bitten by the ants, etc. Those are just some of the examples that fakirs put their bodies through in order to achieve willpower. In 1902, there was a fakir named Agastya. He was from Bangladesh in India, and he decided to raise his one arm in a straight position over his head. Agastya was a Hindu for whom all the pleasures and pains of the body were Maya, or basically just a mere illusion. Agastya adopted that particular posture because in his mentality, it would aid him in departing from pain. During the first 3 months after he adopted that position, he experienced terrible pain and discomfort, of course. Can you just imagine how painful that must have been? If sometimes, we sleep in a bad position for just a few hours and the next day we can hardly function. Nonetheless, 3 months. Unless one truly were a master of the power of the mind over matter, then we would be able to mitigate the pain. Otherwise, the pain will still be there. After 3 months of this position, his limb was absolutely rigid, with very little or no blood circulation. So, what did he accomplish after 3 months of holding his arm rigid over his head? Well, Agastya's arm didn't accomplish any kind of spiritual achievement or enlightenment. The only thing he was able to accomplish was that a bird built a nest on the palm of his hand, and that was it. The shoulder articulation had been welded in such a way that even when Agastya had wanted to lower the arm, he couldn't do it anymore. Not even after his death, which happened in 1912, no one succeeded in making the arm descend to the side. When Agastya was buried in his grave for his last rest, the arm continued extended with the palm open. Another example we have is about another fakir whom had been holding his body in an arc position day and night for 20 years. He was holding himself on the tips of his fingers and toes. He could never stretch himself back up or move. His disciple had to take care of him every day, from bathing him to feeding him to dressing him, just like if he were a handicapped person, unable to fend for himself. So we see here that the path of the fakir doesn't really provide what is sought by the students. They get into this path searching for consciousness, self-realization, but it's not achieved in this path. If the fakir doesn't get sick or die, he will definitely develop a strong willpower. But this doesn't mean that he has awakened his consciousness or create a casual body. Furthermore, his emotional and intellectual functions remain without development. At this point, the fakir has developed for certain his physical willpower, but has nothing in which to apply it, cannot make any use of it to acquire the superior spiritual or conscious knowledge, or achieve perfection. Usually this path takes such a long time that by the time the fakir has achieved this exceptional willpower, he is too old to start pursuing any real conscious spiritual work. Some of them don't follow this way for religious reasons or because they understand the different possibilities of inner development, but by simple imitation caused by impressionism to seeing other fakirs do it. Many of them give themselves up to a fanatic asceticism. We see this in the East as in the West. They do it because these seekers believe that if they can pay with pain their bad actions or their inability to defend temptation, for that they would even whip themselves with no mercy. They love pain by itself. They ignore that the physical body is the temple of the living God. Nobody self-realizes himself with extreme pain, because the origin of pain is the ego. It is important before we depart this subject to recognize a statement found in the Bhagavad Gita, or the Song of the Lord, a Hindu sacred book, that says the following: men who practice severe austerities, not recommended by the scriptures, only by ostentation or egotism, those attached and concupiscent, deprived of common sense, torture all the organs of the body, and also me, who dwell within the body. Know them, for they have demonic purposes. So that goes to show us that even this sacred scripture tells us that extreme punishment of the body is not well looked at by our God. Now we are going to talk about the second path, the path of the monk. This is the path of faith, the path immersed in religious sentiment and sacrifices. It is a conscious state in which the purpose is to develop the devotional sense, the emotional aspect of the being. Monk's work is focused in his feelings and emotions. They surrender all of their other functions to faith. We must take into account that faith by itself and for itself does not awaken consciousness. There are two other types of faith. The first one, in which all emotional states are managed based on beliefs. The other one, which is based in direct mystical experiences, and because of that, there is no room for doubt. And everything experienced must be believed without question. As far as the monk path goes, it is concerned they develop the will to rule over their emotions. but the rest of their faculties might have been kept without any development. Therefore, for the faith to be a sure bridge towards liberation, there's also need to be a development of the physical and intellectual capabilities. What will be done throughout new sacrifices and austerities. That means that the monk has the religious part conquered, but they still need to develop a strong willpower to continue with their spiritual work. In other words, they will need to pair their strong beliefs with the willpower developed by the fakir. There are very few monks that get that far. There are even fewer who succeed over the difficulties that the real path enforces. Most of the time, they are unable to succeed because they fail to achieve their initiation, which is given by their Divine Mother in a higher level of spiritual development, which is not easily achieved. Now we arrive to the third path, the path of the yogi. The gravity center of the yogi's path resides in his mind, in the psychic development. Nonetheless, there are different branches of yoga. First, we have the Bhakti Yoga, or yoga of devotion. This type of yogi develops the mystical part, the higher devotion, and could easily give us illumination, but could not take us to our inner self realization of the being. The second type of yoga is the Gnana Yoga, the mental yoga. Gnana Yoga is centered in the knowledge of oneself. It studies the different disciplines of the mind, working towards the achievement of the state of samadhi. Samadhi, but not self realization. And samadhi is the ultimate state of concentration achieved through meditation. And this is the right state, but is the right state to proceed with the rest of the work of awakening consciousness. But unfortunately, it isn't taught in yoga. Third, we have the Raja Yoga. The purpose of this yoga is the development of the chakras to assist in achieving mystic or occult powers. Certain development is achieved, no doubt about that, but that is not self realization. By the nature of the practices performed by these yogis, there is no doubt that they develop some kind of psychic powers, such as mental relaxation, concentration, and it is well known that many of them develop powers of telekinesis, moving objects throughout their mental force, or even develop telepathy or hypnotic powers, etc. But if they forget about the doctrine of the many, the ego, it can lead them to paranoia or delirium. They feel as if they have reached an authentic mastership, but this only leads to the development of simple powers. The yogi would normally work in the knowledge of the duality of the mind, and there is no doubt that they would reach a transcendental state. But doesn't mean that the yogi has created the legitimate mental body to reach an awakened consciousness. Fourth, we have the Agni Yoga, or the yoga of the inner fire, also known as Kundalini Yoga. This one would lead us right into the doorstep of the fourth path. The fourth path, it is known as the straight path. The fourth path also involves the other three we studied before. We could say that is a compilation of all three prior steps. They are all needed in order to achieve the success needed on the fourth path. This fourth path is also known as the royal path or the path of the razor's edge. This is the Gnostic doctrine. Earlier, we talked about what each one of the different paths' objectives were. The fakirs seek the total domination over their corporal body. The monks pursue the development of their emotions through religion. The yogi strives for the perfection of the mind, transcending all the characteristics, duality in which this one struggles, making it able to get the knowledge. The fourth path, the path of the balanced man, leads to perfection and the harmonious development of all centers of the human body. Through the awakening of the consciousness, working with the physical body, emotions, and thoughts simultaneously is how we are going to achieve our final purpose. A whole series of exercise parallel over these three levels, physical, anemic, and spiritual, are useful for this achievement. This path, the fourth path, embraces and synthesizes the work with the other three in perfect equilibrium. The fourth path is the path of the perfect matrimony, the road of the intelligent being, the path of the one who studies Kabbalah and alchemy, applying them in their harmonious realization of all infinite possibilities, being kept synthesized in the awakening of consciousness. And this awakening of consciousness is based in the disintegration of the psychological defects, also known as the ego, or more commonly known as the seven deadly sins. The fourth path is also based in the transmutation of our energies, achieving the development of the inner fire. The progress is determined by the dissolution of the ego and also the sacrifice for humankind. This path does not demand that the person retreats from the world or abandon all contact with human beings, leave all their material possessions and events. No, no, no. But requires a preparation acquired in the psychological gymnasium of our daily life. This track starts further away than of the yogi. Its gravity center resides directly in the consciousness or anemic essence. It is necessary to be prepared to enter the fourth path. He who wants to follow this path has to have certain qualifications or conditions in his life in favor of the spiritual work. Or at least those ones that do not make it impossible. Because it is necessary to understand that as much as in the exterior life, as in the interior, some conditions could constitute barriers on the fourth path. Therefore, this path is the least known. It's the least known other than the other three traditional ones. The fourth path is very exact, much more exact than the other three. And this path is the true path that will lead us to a conscious awakening. This week's exercise will be to start gathering information on all the four paths and adapting our daily life to start on the straight path. Remember, we're not going to be able to do all the exercises that each one of the fakir, the monk, and the yogi apply themselves to on a daily basis. But let's take at least one exercise from each one of them, adapting it to our daily lifestyle, and see how we can actually start working towards that perfect lifestyle. With that, we conclude this week's video. But make sure to come back next week where we will be discussing another amazing topic to help you reach that end goal of creating a greater holistic lifestyle. As always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Gnostic Hub to receive weekly video update notifications. So let it be written, so let it be done. See you all in the next video.